We're all familiar with the three whats: what it is, what it can do for me, and what does it cost. Tyler Rickenaugh, Country Financial, can help you find the answers with insurance coverage to help protect what's most important to you, all at a price you can afford. So while you're juggling work and kids while trying to keep an eye on your financial future, Tyler Rickenaugh, Country Financial, will make sure they are the first ones there when you need them most. Many young parents leave pages of instructions for the sitter when they have their first date night after the baby is born. But only 36% of parents with minor children in the U.S. have any sort of plan to protect their children if they don't come back. Don't be part of that 64% without planning. At the Wilson Law Group, located in Madison, estate planning is all we do.
Fostering deeper relationships, influencing behavior change, developing resilience. You're about to start winning. Here is your host, Christine Bright.
Welcome to Parenting Game. I am so glad you are here. My guest is Kristi Tanner, a mother of 4 who is in her journey of recovery. This story is near and dear to my heart. I had the privilege of walking part of this journey with Kristi while I was their child care professional for 2.5 years. And now on the other side of it, we're able to call each other friends. And I'm already crying. Kristi, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story today.
Absolutely.
Well, first, before I get into it, congratulations, 2.5 years of sobriety.
Yes.
So we're high-fiving it.
Thank you so much. It's a really big deal. It is it is the greatest accomplishment of my life to be in recovery and soundly planted here.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and as I said, I had a chance kind of from the beginning of when you decided that you needed to get help, and during that time we've had our rocky times. We had an unusual relationship, but as I said, out of it we've gained a lot of understanding of each other and now are very dear friends, so I'm grateful for that.
Absolutely.
But let's get into the beginning. So I started with your family in June, and the plan was to co-parent. You had one of your boys. You have 4. Well, tell us real quick. Tell us about the boys.
Absolutely. So I'm a mom of 4. Declan is 8, Dawson is 7, Hudson is 5, and Sloan is 3. So there were 4 kids in June of 2019 under the age of 6. The youngest being 6 months old when we met you.
Yes, and I was hired because Dawson was just struggling with some behaviors, and he just needed some assistance with that.
Correct.
And we were going to co-parent and handle the load. But 2 weeks later...
2 weeks later, this was the beginning of the end.
Yeah, some things were drastically changed. And when we say the beginning of the end, it was kind of the beginning of the
beginning of the new beginning.
Yeah.
The beginning of where I really need to be.
Yeah.
But at that time, it looked like it was the ending of one part of my life, absolutely, and the beginning of the better part.
Yeah.
So
two weeks in, there were some incidents that happened.
Yes. 2 weeks in, you came into work, and I had a DUI. And then 2 days later, I got a second one, which I mean, really, if you're going to go out, right, go out in style. So I really did. But what was happening was, it had been a long time coming, having so many kids back to back. We had one child with, a unilateral cleft lip and palate. His year in recovery and his surgeries were extremely traumatic and taxing on the family. And something we did not do was hire help. I felt extremely guilty as a mom for having a kid with special needs. Like, I have got to be the one to fix it. I have got to be the one to do it. And I really couldn't ask for help. So that was something different now, was like, now that we had found help that I felt I could trust, I almost felt like it was permission to let the bottom fall out. I knew it was coming. My marriage we were separated, and it wasn't in a good place. And I knew that I was avoiding everything I needed to look at because I had been hiding behind alcohol. And what I didn't want was to ever be a bad mom. And what the reality was that my thoughts, though I wasn't acting on them, were intrusive, obsessive, and all the time. And so 2 weeks later, I went to a 2-month inpatient rehab. There are lots of ways to get sober. It did not work for me to do it at home in the environment where I was so incredibly addicted. And I couldn't take responsibility for taking care of myself. And when you can't take care of yourself, you certainly cannot take care of 4 small kids. So I went to rehab, and one of the things that I chose was a rehab where I would be able to see the kids still. This wasn't my first time at rehab. I tried 2 years before. I went to a fancy schmancy one out in California, and I sent an email to my friends. I'm like, hey guys, I am gonna get an A+ in recovery, and I will be a moderate drinker. It's gonna be great. I really honestly believe that. I thought I was gonna outsmart addiction. You know, I really, I'm smart, I'm listening. They're telling me what I can't do. I'm gonna figure this out. I did not figure it out, okay? I figured it not out.
Yeah.
But this recovery center that I went to was small, private, intensive, nothing fancy, right? Like, it was a beautiful facility, but the work was real, raw, difficult, and, you know, all day long. And one of the things that I chose was a place that you could come bring my kids to me. That was, I don't know if I could have gotten sober if I wasn't able to, like, kind of do it with them. And that is something that I don't think we would have had if we didn't have you. So,
Okay,
thank you for
that's
that.
why we have the tissue.
Sorry. So,
For me, I'd never had that type of situation before, to navigate it. And
like, here's the mom, and now she's gone.
yeah, and now I'm, being a surrogate parent. But for you, the question was there an internal struggle to finally make that decision of, if I really want to get sober this time, I'm going to have to leave, and that means leaving my kids.
Yeah.
So I mean,
the thing is, recovery will never work for somebody else. Not even for your kids. I tried to get sober the first time because I wanted to be such a good mom. And I tried really hard, but I failed because I didn't do it for me. I tried to please other people. I tried to make the consequences go away, but I didn't want to deal with the problem. And the problem was I had no self-esteem, no self-worth, no anything to, I didn't know who I was anymore. It's like I lost my identity from, becoming a working young professional to a stay-at-home mom with all these kids, and then we move, and it's like and my community is gone, and my husband has a big job and he's traveling and things aren't going well. It was just like I tried so long to hold that string, to just like keep it all tied together. And at some point it was like, it just broke. You know, it just broke. But the point was I had nothing left to lose. I had lost relationships with everyone important in my life. My parents, my husband, my relationships with my children. I mean, as much as I was there, they were not the same kind of relationships I have now. And I had to be willing to lose it all. And I was willing to lose. I thought getting sober meant I was going to be boring and I was never going to have fun and I would never be invited to nice places and I would never have friends and I would never do anything with my life because, you know, all the fancy people and the nice stuff has alcohol because that's what we're told. And, you know, and I was like, I want those things. But what I wanted more was like to stay alive. And at some point, like for me, it was, if you do not get this one thing, you will have nothing. And I proved it to myself over and over again. I'm stubborn. It took me multiple bad consequences to give it up. But, you know, and it's like almost the first 3 weeks in the program, I felt like I was trying to be an A+ student in recovery. I have an answer, you know, like I was all over it. And then I called myself out on, was I being 100% honest? Was I really saying everything that I held on to that was shame-based, that made me feel small, that I'd never talked about? Because I think vulnerability is what I learned is like the key to unlocking freedom.
Oh, absolutely.
Yourself. Like, you don't have to be tied down to the narrative of the worst part of your story. And I didn't know that. And like, I think in rehab, it's like you get to be a teacher alongside a witness, alongside, you do it all together. And it's like, the more you say we're all the same, it's like we're all on this journey together. Like, we are not alone. I felt so alone. I didn't know another mom that was drinking mimosas at 3 p.m. when her kids got off the bus. I thought I was alone. I wasn't alone. There's so many people. But I mean, it takes what it takes. And I think mostly it took being willing to give up your ego, your reputation, who you thought you were, what you thought because I've relearned everything. And what I thought isn't who I am. Thank God.
Yeah.
Like, it's so much better now. Thank God.
So you were 2 months, you know, at recovery.
Yes.
I was stepping in to be that surrogate, you know, parent. So everything was roses when you got out of recovery, right?
Oh, yeah.
Not so much.
No.
So, you know, the transition home. And I would say that's where, rightfully so, things got that bumpy.
Yes.
And I've just been so thankful that we've had those conversations to understand what was going on, you know, on both sides.
Totally.
And, you know, so you were getting a lot of pressure to be like me, which when you shared that with me, just like made me so sick to my stomach. And I'm like, I'm so sorry that happened to you. But, you know, I'm a paid professional, highly trained, and you were now supposed to come in off of this healing and stuff and now be this duplicate of me. And that pressure was, so share a little bit about that and the transitioning home and just all of that of reconnecting with the kids.
Yeah. I mean, I tried not to have a lot of expectations. I think one of the things we talk about in recovery is like expectations are like later going to become resentments. So just don't have a lot as best you can. But I did you know, it was difficult to come home and be like, okay, I left and I was a full-time mom. And now I come back and they've kind of had another full-time parent here doing my thing, and now I'm supposed to come back in. And I don't do things like you did. And things in our house, well, they were working much better when I came home. much better when I came home. But I wasn't a part of that process.
Yeah.
So part of that is like, wait, how does my house work now? And part of it was like, wait, my kids do, what's the routine now? And it's like, wait, who am I? And where is my role? And like, I just spent 60 days only thinking about not drinking alcohol. And now that I'm outside of a gated community and I'm driving past liquor stores and I'm supposed to be cooking dinner when I used to be pouring a glass of wine, and now I was a full-time stay-at-home mom, but now I'm unclear where I'm needed. I felt displaced and very confused about where I was and what I was supposed to be doing. So essentially one of the things that happened and worked for us is I moved out. I got an apartment and we did something called nesting. So our kids stayed in our home, you stayed in our home. That was the constant, and I came and went. I found for my own personal recovery, I was not able to be in a home that just like held so many secrets and toxicity, like that it was too much to try and deal with all of it at the same time. So moving out, I mean, and then, you know, it's hard to come back in too, to be like, I'm the one moving out and coming back in. I don't know.
Yeah, and looking back, you know, too, as I said, it was a new situation for me that I've been, you know, put in. And one, you know, I grew, and I hope I have the opportunity to help a family like that again. But the thing that would have been helpful is to have a transition plan coming back.
Oh my gosh.
You know, and I was so just focused on the kids. You were so focused on the recovery. Neither one of us, you know, thought,
Family.
yeah, maybe we should sit down and like, what is this going to look like, you know, now that, and plus, you know, I'm, you know, I didn't like continue to prove myself right, because I'm getting paid to be there and have to make sure that things continue, you know, as they were. So that's where my focus was. And, you know, as we've had the conversations after the fact, that was a big piece that neither one of us thought about doing.
No. And no, we were both so focused on our own parts.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And like the kids were like, whatever.
No, we've got
everybody.
I mean, they really, oh my gosh. I mean, as you know, I get to come and see the kids, and they're just amazing and have a great relationship. But the transition home, so, you know, that's an important piece for I think people know, and that you share that this definitely is, you know,
It's
journey.
a process.
Yeah.
This is not a, you know, getting sober. I think any sort of addiction or, you know, mental health recovery is like this. It's sort of a state of denial for some sort of period, and then some sort of event or realization that something drastic needs to change. And it did, you know, and it had to.
So the one thing that you did do well is put a recovery plan, you know, in place.
Yes.
So share with us the steps in that, because I think that's this really, you know, again, even though we miss that piece of transitioning back in the home, you did have a recovery plan in place.
For sure.
And I believe that's what, you know, kept things going well in spite of kind of this other tension.
Correct.
That was going on.
My recovery plan was, it had to be priority number one. Staying sober, still, every day is priority number one. I just don't think about it anymore. It's foundational now, is just sobriety. That's just one of the pillars of who I am and how my life works. But for a long time, that was the first thing I had to choose every day. And I just sorry. Lost my...
Well, so you had the...
recovery plan,
Yes.
sorry. So when I first came home, I mean, going from a place where you're so protected to a place where things are available was one of my biggest fears is if I don't tell absolutely everybody in my life, I will relapse. I could walk into any bar, and I'm a cute girl, sit down and order a glass of wine, and no one would think anything of it. So I put a lot of things in place. I was in AA, an AA chair, my butt, every day for 18 months. I did not miss a day. I didn't care what the meeting was about. I don't care if it's in a church basement. I don't care if it's pouring rain. I am there. If I can't find something else to do with my thoughts or my hands or my feet, I listen to a podcast. I have a sober book I'm listening to. I mean, I was eating, breathing, living sobriety. And I had to for a really long time. Some of the other things that I did that are sort of like bizarre little things that I found really helpful, a little thing like my passcode on my phone is my sober date. Every single time I open my phone, I'm putting in my sober date and reminding myself who I am and what is foundational in my life. Subliminal messages all the time. When I first came home, I stopped going to the same places. I stopped hanging out with the same people. I drove different ways home. I left my ID in my car so I couldn't purchase alcohol. It's like put up all the safety nets, all of them, right? Like ask for help. Ask for help. It's like, you know what, Christine? I'm having a bad day. I need to go to a meeting. Ask for help. I wasn't willing to do it before, right? It's like I felt like I have to be so strong and brave and figure it out. And now I'm like, hey, I'm drowning. Does anyone have a life raft? I'm drowning.
Well, and then you also built and reached out and built a new community.
I did.
I mean, you did have to replace some friendships. You had to replace, activities.
Lots.
So share a little bit about that.
Yes. So the biggest thing I did for my recovery is I started an Instagram account called Mocktail Mommy, and I did it as an accountability piece. My name is Kristi Tanner, and I'm an alcoholic. And if you see me drinking, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Like, I really did it because I wanted to trust myself so badly, and I just didn't yet. But I started writing about how it felt to be a mom, to try in mommy wine culture, in a fancy house with all of these kids to try and get sober. And it turns out a lot of people really relate to that. There's a lot of people that have turned to alcohol to numb feelings and, avoid reality. I think a lot, essentially during the pandemic, it got way worse with all these moms and kids at home with no routine and no getting out of the house. And so one of the other things that this community that I joined is called Sober Mom Squad, and it was born out of the pandemic when AA went not in person. Lots of people in recovery were really lost. Lots of people in recovery go to AA every day for the rest of their lives. Now, you don't have to, right? It's a process, it's your journey, but a lot of people didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And AA is online now, some of them, but it caused a real panic. And so Sober Mom Squad is an online recovery just for women, just for moms trying to get sober. And we talk about it. You call in and you talk about the real stuff. And I just can't say enough that not protecting the words that are true and keeping them inside and allowing them to be real, allows you to deal with it, grow from it, be who you want to be. And the only way you can do that is get it out.
Yeah.
Well,
the one thing with vulnerability, right? We think I'm going to be vulnerable over here,
correct,
but I'm not going to be vulnerable here.
Right.
And as we know, you're not being vulnerable anywhere.
Right.
You're just joking yourself.
If you have to compartmentalize you're not being vulnerable.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So before we finish up, we're going to put on screen
Yeah.
some of the resources, but if you could just share with us some of those websites
Sure,
where you
yeah.
have found support.
I mean, some of the stuff is AA.org. Madison area AA is MAICO, MAICO. And they have, there's also a MAICO app where you can like download it on the phone and you can put in your location and it'll give you the nearest AA meeting. Sober Mom Squad is sobermomsquad.com. The Luckiest Club is another online support group, which is men and women by an author named Laura McCowan, who wrote We Are the Luckiest, which is an excellent memoir. There's another book called This Naked Mind by Annie Grace, which is sort of the science behind addiction, but in a really consumable, like relatable fashion. Like it wasn't off-putting at all. It was really interesting. And then, I mean, honestly, the other place that I have found the best support is Instagram. And if you look up hashtags sober, sobriety, recovery, there are hundreds of thousands of people just like you and just like me trying to figure it out, doing it sober. Like it's really amazing.
That's the one great thing about social media.
Right?
And before we end our time together, you shared this with me, and I'm going to share it with our audience. But your personal mantra is keep no secrets, carry no shame.
That's right.
And I absolutely love that.
Oh, thank
and
you.
I absolutely love you being on the show and being vulnerable here and with my audience. And I thank you for tuning in to this episode of Parenting Game. We're all familiar with the 3 whats: what it is, what it can do for me, and what does it cost. Tyler Rickenaugh, Country Financial, can help you find the answers with insurance coverage to help protect what's most important to you, all at a price you can afford. So while you're juggling work and kids while trying to keep an eye on your financial future, Tyler Rickenaugh, Country Financial, will make sure they are the first ones there when you need them most. Many young parents leave pages of instructions for the sitter when they have their first date night after the baby is born. But only 36% of parents with minor children in the U.S. have any sort of plan to protect their children if they don't come back. Don't be part of that 64% without planning. At the Wilson Law Group, located in Madison, estate planning is all we do.
Thank you for watching The Parenting Game. All episodes of The Parenting Game are available on demand at sunprairiemediacenter.com.